Hello, I'm Elizabeth and I'm a member of the Elenon Silanevsis with Artemis Soras, and obviously with the connection of Soras' name and the universal code within that, we're talking to you today about the universal law. We created the Universal Law Community Trust, and we're based, our main office is in Icaria, and we've been creating the community trust to aid people who realise that there is a difference between the law and the legal system, which is currently in operation across our countries worldwide today. The countries that we once believed existed, we have found that they've been sold out as corporations, and obviously Alada being the primary trust fund feeder account of the whole of the stock exchange, using all of the assets and wealth and resources of the people of Alada to fund this terrorist and parasitical system, which people are being demeaned and diminished into becoming Vatican debt slaves. So we've been teaching people what it is, obviously, that's going on. Most people are aware of what's going on and fictional debt and how money's created, and what the backing of the money is actually fraud. So how it's being done is a whole different ballgame for most people who are not taught the basic principles of the difference between uniform commercial code, legal systems, and adding to the administration of the law actually makes it unlawful. So by visiting our website at www.universallawcommunitytrust.com, where you will find that you're able to right-click your mouse and translate it into any language in the world. It briefly explains how the administrative code called legal systems caused us to lose our trust, our embistacini in each other. And when here in Greece, in Hellenic Republic's definition, they don't recognise a trust. And it's not to trust or the trust, it's the embistacini that you have between one another that we're talking about. So in our community, we trust in the universal law. We know the difference between breaking the law and doing harm, and adding to the administration of the law, which creates legal systems, which means that they can legally do you harm. Now, our point is that whether you do harm with a piece of paper or whether you do harm with a gun to somebody's head, the result is still the same. Harm is done and the law is broken. So by helping people understand, or comprehend rather, the legal jargon and the fiction and the facts about the fiction and how this has come to pass, the fact that everybody is subject to a international maritime law contract through the birth certificate, that they actually the system copyrighted your given name and turned it into a corporation. And the corporation that they turned it into was never disclosed to you or your parents. The fact that it would create a lifetime bondage into a system where you are going to be diminished, and your children and your children's children are all diminished into being Vatican debt slaves and commodities, classed as chattel, goyim, commodity, and used as salvage under the maritime code. So once people have got an understanding of that, they place their names under a non-disclosure, referred to in what we would have been taught in England as your Greek mythology, which is obviously your history, in the same way that Cananus and Odysseus, same, blinded the Cyclops, which is the all-seeing eye, by not disclosing the name of the being who committed the act of blinding the Cyclops with, as you all know. So by placing your name under non-disclosure, then because your name actually is created under non-disclosure, by you stating the facts about the fiction, that my name is under non-disclosure and I don't have the jurisdiction to use it, I cannot commit commerce with you today. Now, if you force me into intercourse, whether it's commercial or sexual, it is actually statutory rape. So the system that would have you commit commerce by committing fraud, by laying claim to something that's not yours, which is a copyrighted name, yes, the energy behind it, and yes, the universal source creation that you are behind that name is indefinable, and that is obviously yours. But at the moment it's being usurped and used as a utility transmitting account inside the Securities Exchange Commission in Washington. Now we can go into their system, and we can see that under the heading of Hellenic Republic SA, which is the trading name of the country that once was or is Alada, you can see that those accounts, your Taftotitas, your FME, your driving licenses, even your relockers for your electricity supply, are being utilised in their system as a utility transmitting account. And my job used to be, I used to have to look at all of those numbers, which represents you and your life and every choice that you make. And my job was to advise the trust fund managers of JP Morgan, Coutts Bank, etc. and so forth, where to invest hundreds of millions of dollars worth of investment into bonds that represented you and your choices. For example, if you go to Alpha Vita today and you buy €100 worth of genetically modified crap, then that information will go into the system tomorrow, and it would come to a person like me in my job before, and I would then advise the trust fund managers of these large banks to buy stock in your number for pharmaceuticals, because it would be a good bet that you are going to need pharmaceuticals 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now. When I realised that a number cannot choose between Volkswagen or Mercedes-Benz or Heinz beans over HP sauce, and that only a living, breathing being can make that decision, I realised that I was selling people on the stock exchange and supporting slavery. So I quit, and I went around the country and told everybody what was going on. And this is the result of that we've come to Greece, to come to Alada, to be able to put the two things together, and we're able to support each other economically, practically, physically, and in all walks of life. What people have been doing is they've been going onto the website, reading the difference between lawful instead of awful, we call it, instead of legal fiction. They then click onto our We Buy Any Debt site. Now, because debt's fiction, you can't actually buy something that doesn't exist, and we're not kidding ourselves that it doesn't exist, it really doesn't exist. They follow the steps, there's 10 simple steps there of how the structure works. The people agree to the Constitution, which is universal law, which we all agree that we're not going to harm anybody or our environment, that we're all going to support each other with 5 hours a week contribution to our community. So we've got 5 hours of people making honey, 5 hours of people making oil, builders, plumbers, bakers, lawyers, ex-bankers, and we're putting all of our 5 hours in, which is then replacing the stock exchange. So it's direct democracy with your local community, and we are the community. We're doing this anyway. We're all looking after one another, but we're paying for the privilege of being able to do it by having a system that interlopes in our lives every time we use the name. So the steps to freedom from an indebted mind, really what you're doing is you're discharging the debt that's in your head, that's been consuming you and parasiting off your every waking moment. You visit the We Buy Any Debt website, you click services, there's a contact box opens, and you simply put the name, email address, what you're assigning your consent. Now, because the way that the maritime bond works, the birth certificate, by you using that name, you're granting consent to the system to say that you're granting them your authority, your author, you're authorising them with your authority to for them to act on your behalf. And what you're doing is you're taking back that presumed consent and saying, we don't trust you anymore, we can't trust you anymore because you're not a trust, you're a corporation. And so therefore you can't hold our assets and resources in trust anymore. even if you were pretending to. And we've assigned our consent elsewhere. Now, people are then like, oh, well, who are you and who are we signing us a consent to? What you're actually doing is you're assigning your consent back to yourself. So you now are the administrator, the director, the banker, the CEO, you're the lawyer, the builder, the plumber. You all of those things, all of those roles back in your own hands. You simply put in the account number that you're assigning the authority to act over to us to stand surety to, which is under mercantile law, which was then corrupted and turned into Uniform Commercial Code, which is the law of the sea. So what you're doing is really you're resalvaging yourself. They class you as salvage and say that you haven't claimed your estate back, so therefore you must be unclaimed estate and held as bona vacanta at the Vatican. And what we actually do is we prevent them from using your name. If we just go back to the We Buy Any Debt site, the Universal Law site, it explains how the We Buy Any Debt structure works. And what we've done is we've created something. When somebody asks you, who are you? What do you say? Most people would say, here's my taftotita, this is my Vatican debt slave name, and I'm here for you to physically and metaphysically and metaphorically rape. I'm giving you my consent to empty my credit file. Every time I pay my electricity bill, I'm actually paying 1% broker fee, and you can look at your electricity bills here in Greece, turn them over, and you'll see that there's 3 barcodes on those bills. The first barcode on the left-hand side, where they tear it off the negotiable instrument, which is what the receipt, you would say, at the bottom creates, goes to the broker, which is either ELTA or Alpha Bank or whichever bank it is that you've used to pay your slave tokens, euros, over the counter. And you can see that that goes to them. That actually pays into another account. Then inside the other barcodes that are there, you can see there's 2 little arrows at the bottom, no greater than and no less than, that means, and there's an amount, a very large amount, it's actually 10,000 times the amount that you've paid the 1% of, always. Now that money is, or credit should we say, is coming out of your unsecured credit file that you've just given consent to for DE, or for example, or Cosmote, or take any of the big corporations, who are actually trading on your own resources. And they're helping themselves because you've just given them consent to by using the name. So, but because you didn't know and you weren't aware of that, what you're actually doing is you're creating this reality unconsciously. And now you can become conscious of that fact, of what it is that you're doing, and you choose whether you allow these corporations to pilfer your credit file and create bombs and weapons and war and terrorism in your name or not. So what we did is we created, somebody stopped me actually and said, what's your name and who are you? And I said, I don't really know, to be perfectly honest. I've got a given name and I've got a capitalized name, but the best way to define myself, if I have to define something that's indefinable, is energy and matter in movement. So, and that's really all that we are, and all that we are at the same time is all that we need to be, is energy and matter in movement. You're not the debtor. You're not using a debtor's name. So we created Minister M of N, which is energy and matter in movement. So I am ministering my energy and matter in movement. Now, in the ecclesiastical court system, in order for them to be able to try to claim jurisdiction of your mind, body and soul, they have to have a higher standing than you of your awareness and your capacity, so that you have to have, if you like, a Vatican dial-up to your God or your creator. And obviously we've come to realise that lives within inside each and every single one of us. So we use Minister M of N to separate the legal dealings, so you don't have to corrupt yourself by committing commerce with something that didn't belong to you. It's clearly got Hellenic Republic stamp on there, on somebody's taftotita. This one's a bit different because it's got all rights reserved. So under Uniform Commercial Code 207308, you're not obliged to perform under a contract that you didn't knowingly enter into. Now, none of us signed our own birth certificate, that's point one. Point two is that nobody can enter into a contract on your behalf. Point three is that it's hearsay, that allegedly a child was born on this day to this being, and this person is now going to use hearsay and third-party declaration to say this is the occurring of an event. So that's part four, is the fact that the terms and conditions of the birth certificate were not disclosed. Nobody told you or your parents that by entering into this contract that your children were going to be forever Vatican debt slaves. Had they told you that, then most of us probably would have said, no, thank you very much. I'm not going to create a contract that's so fraudulent and supporting slavery system. So they've assumed the consent through fraud. So because of that, any contract that they have got is null and void because it isn't created with the 5 vital things that make a contract valid, which is a meeting of the minds for a start off, acceptance. You can't accept something if you don't know what it is that you're saying yes to. The terms and conditions weren't disclosed, and it creates unjust enrichment, to name just a few of the particulars of each of these contracts that we're unconsciously committing by using the name. So what we do is, once the people have assigned their consent away from Hellenic Republic, Crown Corporation, whatever the local country's corporate name entity has become, they then put their names under, they copyright the name so that nobody else can use it except the people themselves. And then if these companies and corporations use that name, you can actually invoice them. So you're turning the system back on them and saying, okay, you want to use this asset, I've sold this asset to another company, corporation, legal entity, whatever you want to refer it to as a trust, and they are now going to invoice you, DE, Bank of Ethniki, the Cosmote, for the unlawful and illegal use of an asset that doesn't belong to the system anymore, that's granted you this license to use it. So what we do is we send them a notification that the consent has been assigned to something else, we don't have to disclose what, and that the name is now under non-disclosure, and the previous creditor, you, have retired from crediting that fictional account. So really what you're doing is you're moving your universal credit, which is what you are, away from the system, from them being able to utilise it without your consent. And if they do use it, then you would then prosecute them for copyright infringement and intellectual property theft. So we send them a Schedule A to say, should you like to use this asset any longer, then it's going to cost you 20 million for trying to breach a non-disclosure. It's going to cost you 20,000 for every time that you try to imply or impose contracts, an order from a bankrupted system, a kangaroo court, for example, that's got no authority over living, breathing people. And then you become the creditor again, is really, in short, what happens. So under their Uniform Commercial Code 9609610, that's how they're able to steal your houses and your property without any valid court order. And if you have a little look through there, you can go onto this page, which is called the Universal Law, this is the Cornell Institute online, and when you go onto there, you can get the definitions on the screen here of what Uniform Commercial Code definition is, such as, in this case, this is 307208, and if we click onto there, it explains that under this code, no party who has explicit reservation of rights performs or promises to perform in any way, shape or form. So you're not obliged to perform under a contract that you didn't knowingly enter into. Now if we go to Uniform Commercial Code 9609609, it explains it explains the restoration of rights. 609 and 610. And what that actually is where the creditor, so you're now the creditor, uses their collateral in order to offset the debt on behalf of another. So what we've done is we've created large amounts of debt for Alpha Bank, Deutsche Bank, Hellenic Republic SA, AADE, which is the Ministry of Finance and Trade, and we have sent them invoices to say that you've been committing commerce with our assets without our consent, and that created this debt. So then we created something called kindness credits. So kindness credits is it's a different kind of energy system. So we're all funding kindness credits with our energy, which is a different frequency to the fear, hate, slavery system, which is represented with slave tokens we call the euros. And the people come into our shops. We've opened shops in Ikaria and Samos, and now we're opening these here in Athens, where you can come along and you can have organic coffee. And well, you can have anything you like. It's all natural. It's all oil from Samos, honey from Ikaria, food from growers around Peloponnesus. We're bringing people together. They're all putting their 5 hours a week in, which they are now free to do so because they're not working as a debt slave anymore to pay these fictional debts that the community is standing surety to by sharing these 5 hours between one another. And in return, you can claim anything that you need. We all need the same things. We all need shelter, housing, healthcare, energy, and we're able to provide these directly to one another by sharing our energy and our resources together. So the people put in their 5 hours a week. You come along and you say, right, I need organic food, the same as everybody else. I'm putting in my 5 hours of building. So when anybody wants a builder in your vicinity, then you would stand surety to that liability of the whole community needing reputable builders, for example. And in return, you can come to one of the kindness credit outlets and exchange your building work for transportation, for example, or natural cures instead of pharmaceuticals, or organic food. And so you make a kindness credit claim form, and you say, this is what I need this month, this is what I need this month, and you can do it on a year-to-year basis, and then we can discharge that liability between ourselves to help one another, to give everybody what it is that we all need individually or as a collective. So what's been happening, the way that it works is that people come into the shop and they say, right, we'd like this and this and this. So let's say a piatti mera. Normally it would be 7 to 8 euros in a restaurant or a taverna, because everybody's got to pay tax, because you're using something that creates an implied contract, which is the euro. So we all have to pay for the privilege of using their monetary system. So if you imagine how a casino works, you take the money, the slave tokens, and you buy tokens with it. You exchange it for tokens, and then off you go into the casino, and the casino doesn't pay tax on any transactions after that, because you're in another state of being. You're not in Rothschild monetary system anymore. You're in kindness credit land, if you like. In kindness credit land, your energy immediately is worth 30 to 50% more, because we're not passing any liabilities on to you that our indebted mindset would say, I believe that I need a license, I need a shop license, I need to have paid my tax, eforia, I need to have paid my electricity bill, my kosmute, in order for me to be able to bring this service to you, to provide you with your healthcare or your well-being. It's called the Ministry of Remedy. So we're all ministering the remedy to whatever problem it is that each and every single one of us has got. So no longer is it, right, I'm all right, but I can see you over there and you're not. If you've got a problem, we've all got a problem. And so we're all putting our energies together and saying, your problem is our problem, and we're all standing together. And this is why I resonate so much with what Artemis Soros is doing. because it reflects everything universally of how it could be. And people talk about it being euphoria. Well, it's just one belief away. So if we all work together and directly, with direct democracy, giving each other what it is that we need without some terrorism parasitical system interloping into every step that we take in our lives, then we're free. So by discharging the debt in the mind, we're then able to use our energy in a way that we'd like to see create our reality. So the people come in our shop and they say, right, I'd like a cup of organic coffee. And so they don't get Nestle, they get organic coffee from Guatemala or one of our community projects in Ethiopia. And it's the equivalent of 50 cents. So you can't get a Nestle coffee in Athens for less than €1, one slave token. And out of that slave token, all of that energy has gone for FOREA, license, tax, the guy's tax who works in the shop, the electricity, all of the things. And really, your cup of poisonous Nestle coffee cost really 10 cents to make. But that when you bought that coffee, you actually created in the stock exchange a massive peak in pharmaceuticals in your Taft-Officer number, because they then can gamble that because you're drinking Nestle coffee, although you think it's Greek, it's actually Nestle, and you're paying €1 for it, that you are actually paying to hedge fund your own disease 10, 20, 30 years from now. So people like I used to be would be buying stocks and shares and bonds in pharmaceuticals, GlaxoSmithKline, in your Taft-Officer number, because you bought the Greek coffee today or a packet of Greek coffee in the supermarket using your bank card to send that information into the system with. So by us being able to provide you with, first of all, something that's not going to kill you for getting the energy in the first place to buy it with, your energy is now worth 30 to 50% more. You're accessing resources affordably, which are going to be healthy for you instead of harm you. And really what you're doing is you're taking away your energy from funding this terrorist system and saying, I only fund this. This is what I credit. I credit kindness instead of fear and hate. I credit my community instead of some Central European bank that's just sucking the life out of everybody. And they can't use your account then for spraying chemicals or illegal wars or weapons or bombs and things like that. So it's taking back this self-determination and the autonomy and knowing yourself and what you're capable of. So what we'd like to do is offer to the people who are involved in Artemis Soros how you access your treasury account. So the treasury account that we were talking about, that everybody else is having a heyday out of, while you're working like a debt slave to try to pay your way in this system, in this commercial system, is there for you to be able to utilize as long as you've got the capacity and the awareness of what is it you're going to do with it. We're not going to give you this information so that you can go and buy 10 laptops and support slavery through Samsung or iPhone or what we want you to do is we want you to be able to access this resource, which is really you and your credit, and for you to apply it in a way that's going to be beneficial for your community and for yourselves as well, and how to help other people with it. So the way that you can do this, what they did is they took your Taft-Officer number and they created a corporation with it,